value will be created on that. So this is also little bit is in deficit in the banking industry. And final point is there, that is when we are talking about that the loan getting from the is there. So next point, every customer have need to transparently know the place his all documents to the banker. So if I say that the experience on that, asking the one documents and given the asking 5 documents, given one, and then again one, then again one. So it will be also delay to the loan processing on that. So I hope that this is a big opportunities for banking industry to lending to the people, no doubt. And all of the corporate sector now is damaged in that sense in the banking industry. And retail is now promoting very good. And agriculture loan, again, if you say that the two preposition is there, if we say that the banking infrastructure in the rural is very poor, banking infrastructure in urban is very high. So for 1 lakh people, urban have the 18 bank branches, but in the rural for 1 lakh people there is 7 branches. And coming to this, the two types of bank in our country, one is a public sector bank and another a private sector bank. Private sector bank are saying that the bank branch is not the credit outlet, it is only the deposit outlet. And public sector bank and then the credit outlet and also the deposit outlet. So that this is in one side opportunities for the farmers to access to reach to the bank branch in the rural is very small, but we say that the 100% farmers are living in the rural. So in that sense now digitization can help them to reach to the bank branch, where bank branch is there, how they can be reached, and the many of the bank are now proposing on that to ask the application of the loan application through the mobile phone, through the internet banking. I hope that that can be helped in future for the agriculture farmer to access the banking services. If they access the banking services, our banker comfort to lending to this segment, I hope that our economy also grow in that much. Thank you to all of you on that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. We've had a very interesting session from the 3 keynote speakers. Now I will ask everybody for their suggestion, because I go by, what the common people suggest. Anybody for a break right now, a 15-minute break, have a cup of tea, and then we come back for the debate square. Any volunteers? Yeah, everybody wants to go. So let's take a break right now, but please be back in 15 minutes. And at that point of time, if I can request the various speakers in the debate section, please to come up after you've had your tea. Thank you. Dr. Chopra, can we just have your attention for a second, please?
This is a token of appreciation.
A token of appreciation from Pan IIT. Mr. Shiv Kumar. And Mr. Ghosh. I hope you will stay for the rest of the proceedings. It will be even more interesting because there's going to be a debate now. I'll request the panelists to come up now. The moderator is here already. And the way we will go in this session is I'll introduce the panelists and give each of them, come on in, give each of them about 5 minutes to talk about what they need to talk about. Incidentally, Matir Kotha, the introduction was already done by Dr. Chopra, because the two of them are working together on this project, but then there's still more to learn over here. Now let me introduce the panelists over here. I have Mr. Raman Ahuja. He's going to talk first. Then Mr.
That this is working. Yeah, so I am Dr. Sudip Mishra from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at IIT Kharagpur.
IIT Kharagpur, that's our IIT Kharagpur token representation over here.
I'm Kullan Kaur. I'll be talking about Matir Kotha, which you saw the glimpse in the morning.
I am Ashish Kankare and I'm going to talk about a textile app focused primarily on jute.
And our moderator is Mr. Kastagir.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Since time is a constraint, I would request the panelists to be short and, in fact, to be very specific within 5 to 7 minutes. Although I believe that that's truly a very short time.
Hello, good morning. Myself Adarsh from Green Agri-Evolution. I will focus on digitization of farmers and digitization of agriculture.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Taranjeet. I represent AgNext today, which is primarily into digital agriculture technologies using imagery and IoT.
Okay, so now this session will start. First, Raman, if we can request you to come up.
So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. It's 12:15. I will try to limit my talk to 5 to 7 minutes. Thanks to PenIT for inviting me to be part of this very important deliberation and workshop, and I hope what I have to share with all of you does add value to the next steps that all of you intend. After a very heady session in the morning with Shiv, Dr. Chopra, and Mr. Ghosh, there's not a lot that one can say from a broad brush perspective into where this thing should go. So what I'm going to try and do here is propose 3 conceptual frames which could be considered as part of the whole design approach that IITs typically like to pursue in putting things together. Yeah, and these by no means are all-inclusive or represent everything that needs to be done. Having said that, in my experience, I believe these are part of the necessary conditions. They're not really sufficient if you just do them. Yeah. So I've chosen the image of an hourglass to represent the global food production and consumption system. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. In the morning shift talked about connecting markets to farmers, the last mile and the first mile. I think that's one of the things that's been a challenge in agriculture growth in India. The connectivity of the market to the producer and vice versa is literally broken. I mean, there's a recent paper by Professor Ashok Gulati about the pricing issues in Indian agriculture policy, in agriculture products. And a lot of this is because the market and producer link is broken. What you see here is on the top of the hourglass, you have about 7.5 billion consumers with varying degrees of access, and that could be from 0 to 120. 120 being people literally who are beyond the category of obese, yeah? And similar number of people who are actually dependent on rural production systems, dependent on rural livelihoods. So there is some level of symmetry, which is why I've chosen the image of an hourglass to represent that. However, what is wrong with this is essentially that, as I said in the beginning, the links between the producer and the consumer are very, very poor. The shortest link is actually some of the people at the bottom part of the hourglass are actually also there as consumers, but that's really one-to-one. Beyond that, established market norms, market prices, market signals don't really work. And if one takes away the OECD countries, which is about 1.5 billion people, and they're also, Mexico, South Africa, Chile are questionable. Most, by and large, everybody, 6 billion people are impacted by these inequities and the broken, distorted market signals. The success of the National Horticulture Mission, Dr. Chopra has left for the day, but he was a key leader in driving the National Horticulture Mission and the growth of horticulture production in this country. Today you hear stories about farmers not wanting to harvest their produce, primarily because the link between production and market demand has not kept pace with the growth of the horticulture growth in this country. So that's a fundamental challenge that any technology, any digital platform will need to address. Food loss and waste is something that all of us talk about. There's not a whole lot being done. More than 15% of all global production actually gets wasted, either at the farm gate and in developed countries more towards the point of consumption in the consumer's shelf and so on and so forth. And part of that is also because of the link between the top and the bottom is actually not there. The symmetry of the hourglass actually leads to the elegance of the whole theme. Having said that, the waste around the hourglass is actually its weakest point. What you see here, there are about 20 companies globally, and some of this would include parastatals, that control $2 trillion of business that goes through the global food production and consumption system. 20 companies. Okay, and we can talk separately what these companies are, give or take a few here and there, but that's the problem that we see. Well, that's potentially one of the causes of the problem. Too much is passing through the hands of too few, and the network just works at the whims and fancies of the people who drive those organizations. So the point here is, if the past is any indicator, and past being, let's say, the last 100 odd years, what has happened in the future, I think we needn't worry about what is to come, because these companies have not delivered any innovation. I mean, we can talk about the innovation, food production, food consumption, and I think the earliest one was the development of the Haber-Bosch process to produce nitrogen and then hence fertilizer. The second one being refrigeration technology, and more recently, genetically modified organisms. But the origin of that is in study of genetics. But beyond those 3-4 items or innovations, there's nothing that these companies or these entities have delivered towards disruptive innovation in this space. So really, the entrepreneurs in the room, the investors, needn't worry that these behemoths are out there to drive their innovation agenda. In fact, the world is their oyster to actually make a difference and create new disruptive technologies. What is also important to note is, because these 3-4 innovations that I've talked about have come from outside the food and agriculture system, we should be mindful that whatever we look for in terms of disruptive technologies to support the digital empowerment, we should also be looking outside constantly and not just say what is inside the food and agriculture ecosystem. So a digital platform, as Shiv mentioned in the morning, is critical to seamlessly integrate the producer and the consumer and drive the growth in incomes and drive the growth in sustainability. The next conceptual theme that I wish to propose for creating the digital platform is around a network approach. Traditionally, all of us talk about value chains. Value chains, when we start to visualize, we see value chains as linear phenomena, typically univariate. They hide a lot of problems. What you see here is an example of a depiction of a network for a small farmer and his ecosystem. The kind of resources that he needs to work with, the ownership is not here, but you can see there are governments involved, there are private sector involved, the kind of knowledge base that is needed for the farmer to operate. All of this, if it's not there in time and in place, the farmer's ecosystem will just collapse. And that's the challenge of designing a digital platform for the small farmer to actually operate effectively. If any of these resources are not available in quality and more importantly in time, I think the farmer will get suboptimal results. And I think the importance of time, I just want to emphasize here, is a farmer, unlike a lot of us, cannot study the night before and produce his crop. He needs to do things in a particular cycle, which is determined by nature. And if it doesn't happen then, whether availability of finances, availability of knowledge or inputs, he cannot produce the crop to the quality that is needed. So the timeliness of any digital platform is paramount. If the platform doesn't activate itself or the nodes start to collapse, it will not work for the farmer and the results will be suboptimal. So I like to see, I like to visualize this as a network, and if we can make each and every node alive and available to the farmer, I think that is something where we can drive a holistic change in the production ecosystem and thereby driving the whole consumption pattern. The third perspective that any digital platform should look at is actually the emerging forms of organization and collaboration. One of the themes that the government has been pushing over the last 7-8 years has been the creation of farmer-producer companies to enable them to participate in more commercial transactions. Now, I don't think there's any digital platform out there which is supporting literacy of these farmers to be able to run their companies. I mean, some of us are here building startups, and we have resources to access to build our startup in terms of knowledge, in terms of, understanding of Companies Act, in terms of accounting. But imagine the poor farmer who's member of an FPC. What are the resource he or she has to be able to understand how to run that company, how to manage the finances, how to manage contracts? So that's an emerging form. Well, the company has been around for a long time. However, the application of that organizational form in the rural context is very, very new. We've seen cooperatives, we've seen others, but a company is very new in the rural context. So a digital platform needs to integrate, needs to ensure there is financial literacy from the producer perspective, from the farm laborer's perspective, from the organizational manager's perspective. If that doesn't take place, we will see again suboptimal results where these FPCs will go by the wayside, and we would have achieved the numbers of creating some 20,000 FPCs across the country, but most of them will be non-functionals. So the digital platform needs to recognize that, needs to recognize the linguistic needs of people on the ground, the fact that there is limited computer literacy at that level. So all of those things need to get embodied to ensure the future organizations, the need of the future organizations are addressed in the digital platform. Likewise, the whole collaboration, the approach, the fact that all of us are sitting here and talking about the need to create a digital empowerment for driving agriculture growth, I don't know if there are established frames for collaboration among private sector players, among silos within private sector companies. Where I worked in the past, it was very difficult for one division to get work done from another division, and this is a multinational I'm talking about. So I think there'll be similar situations in the Indian context as well, and as well in the government. So the digital platform again needs to make sure that data availability across these silos and across these collaboration frames becomes available. For example, where we are today in this Pan IIT forum, I think we are sitting on the third format, which is issue-based platform, literally. I mean, there are others that are operating on the first and second, but this is something that a digital platform needs to be alive to, that it should allow the data movement and data accuracy across different stakeholders and make it actionable. Otherwise, again, there'll be impartial information available and we'll have results that are that are suboptimal. So these are the three themes that I'm suggesting as inputs into what Pan IIT would like to move forward in terms of designing of a digital platform for transformation of agriculture in the country. Just looking ahead, as this platform gets developed, some of the things that I think should be looked at as the platform gets rolled out, and I've given some examples here. These are by no means comprehensive, and some of them can be also removed. So, for example, these frameworks need to be institutionalized. What that means is that there need to be cross-functional projects, cross-business projects, which are not very common in most companies and most private sector entities. They need to be brought to bear. There need to be rules of the game brought out so that people can actually learn to collaborate without affecting each other's commercial interests. I mean, they need to realize that that collaboration is indeed a delivery of a higher order of interest. This will not happen easily. So some success stories, some failures need to be brought out as case studies to ensure that the knowledge gap is filled. Research tools need to be deployed for various reasons, one of them being, to influence evidence-based design of policy. Most policy, as Dr. Chopra said, comes when the bureaucrats think about these things and they talk to a bunch of people and they say, okay, this is a policy, but we need to move to a point of evidence-based policy. So the digital platform in the context of agriculture needs to generate that evidence that will influence policy design. Otherwise, we will be disregarding one key component of the entire agri ecosystem, which is the government's role, right? So evidence-based design of policy, whether the funding or the subsidies or any of those rules and regulations go to a particular subsector, when they get switched on, when they get switched off, for how long, all that is very important, and that should not happen back of the envelope. There needs to be evidence to do that, and there needs to be concrete decisions taken based on that evidence. Tools for increasing awareness within firms and across firms are equally important, because most of us are not used to multi-stakeholder collaborations. Our organizational KRAs require us to operate within a certain boundary, and most of those boundaries are outside these collaborations. So, the HR people, though most of us are here engineers, would need to think about those tools where how do you measure people, how do you incentivize people to think about these collaborations, and how do you activate those kind of collaborations. And my last point, which I've seen at least in the case of agriculture businesses in India, is the fact that literally there are no role models. I mean, since the morning we've heard names like Uber, Amazon, Apple. Anybody who wants to start an IoT type business, they know that, there is the Tesla CEO, there is Uber, there is Amazon. All these people are out there, including some of your IoT colleagues, alums who've, Vinod Khoslas and those kind of people. But in agriculture, I don't think digital agriculture especially, there are any role models. I mean, Shiv has been around for the last, 25, 30 years, Shiv, now? And on the digital side, in the last 20 years, I can't think of many more people who are actually holding the beacon for digital agriculture. So no matter what Pan IIT does, it needs to ensure that such role models get created. And let's accept it. All of us look up to role models for inspiration. And inspiration helps us take leaps and bounds over difficult risks. So role models need to be created, they need to be publicized, and their success stories need to be shared. I think that's very, very important. If nothing else is done, if you can create role models, I'm sure a lot of the problems will get solved. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Raman. Now if I can request Mr. Ashish Kankaria do you want to do it from the podium?